So welcome back, Arturo.
Thank you. I missed you guys. Yeah.
Well, I guess we
Hi, guys.
Yeah, well, I guess.
I don't think there's anything on that.
Oh my God.
How about you? Yeah. I always tell people that.
We just.
Oh, yeah. I believe there's 3 of us.
They like it so much they decide.
Yeah, one day or 2 days. So they had your shock rock. We did 8 at once and then deep.
Really?
You want to do, wow. Is it like their tip or that tip?
Yeah, I'm not there blank. I don't think they are.
Okay. The other home. Arturo. Can you continue?
Where's that one that he does? Steve, you look tired.
For some reason, I'm doing the helping them on EDC now, and then I went to the tourism co-op meeting, and I've been out since 11 this morning.
Yeah.
I was meeting this week, we had about 15 of my family here, so I'm still recovering from that. Oh, it was a lot of fun. A lot of fun, everybody had. And I didn't realize that up in the campground, I said, well, we want to go see the center too, and how that's going. I said, well, it hasn't really changed much the last time. And they said, we haven't been here for 10 years.
Yes, sir.
We didn't even know it was there.
Wow.
So yeah, no one had ever seen the place before. So yeah, it was a lot of fun. A lot of hiking, card games, fires at night.
How far did they come in?
Most of them are from Wisconsin, Michigan, Minnesota, and then my daughter came from California. So,
Put them up in the yurts?
we had half stayed in the house, and let's say my daughter's got 4-month-old twins, so she earned.
They gotta stay in the house.
She earned a place in the house. My mom was in her 90s now, so her and her husband had to stay in the house.
I'm all trying to.
Everybody else in the yurts.
Were you impressed with everything you did?
Oh, I was a piece of it.
Yeah, right.
Have they all seen your house? Your house is so beautiful.
Yeah, I think they'd all seen that before. All but Christy's husband had never been on it before. But everyone else had been here before. So.
That's right.
About 12 years ago. We had 24 people all stayed in the house.
I'm excited for the
The lucky ones got the floor of the carpet.
That's beautiful. How about this?
Thank you.
Yeah, very much. Chicken, it's full.
Oh, wow. Got that.
Here we go.
No, not right now.
Glad we got you back.
Hey, what's up, Steve?
Too bad for them. Good old Eva. Did you see Tim? Right there on your right hand.
I'm just the camera guy. Oh, okay.
Yeah.
So I don't
Maybe it could
know.
be on
I don't know really nobody follows any policies or procedures.
Yeah, we need some more details.
I know.
You're still nursing? How's the program
One
going?
more semester. It's going.
You like it?
Go ahead.
want to be done.
Yeah, I don't blame you.
I think I'm gonna like pursuing that one more.
He's gonna introduce you.
Someone else.
She'll do an introduction. She'll do an introduction.
Now, the pressure.
Skill wise.
No, you go, I go
Yeah,
back,
you
you
go
go. Whatever, I'm like,
Yeah.
okay. You want, okay, yeah, I got like, I'm like, just wait.
No, I think he knew.
And I'm like, I don't know, an hour
This is
just like-
important.
Yeah, they used to, probably do so many hours in the hospital, you know? I know, when you were a nurse next term, I could,
Very good.
all I had to do was have an RN San Bahamas, so I did all the documentation, I carried all the patients, I just had, she had to give the medication, and I could do everything else. So it was cool.
You never know, Carmen.
No shots,
No rain over there.
No rain?
The very first thing I ever gave was a heparin shot.
Oh, really?
We've had a lot.
That was the first medication I ever gave. Cause I remember being scared.
Yeah.
Now we can just shut out.
I don't know.
Is that the one
It's
we did?
interesting.
In school?
Gee,
From my
yeah,
knee.
you did.
Did everybody get a handout?
Today's nine.
I'd like one.
9.6
Oh,
pounds.
nice. That's kind of like my first situation is like that.
I can drive one.
Same, okay. Really?
So you need a little bit of it.
I guess when I thought I was out, they pulled
This piece of milk will come out.
Remember that, The Godfather? That's one of my favorite lines.
It just depends on where they're at, like everything. I had one of my friends, she was dying.
Well,
To death.
But I remember when I went to
Scared
jail,
to death.
my boss.
oh, four. Yeah.
Where'd you get four?
Is there four?
The very, up there by the plate?
Might be over here on the side. Oh, yeah.
How does he go fork?
My buddy, Dennis, he tells me, just because they're elected doesn't mean they're smart. And I all think
Yeah, you're like, do we put one matrix on yet?
But not enough to help.
He's got like a belly over there.
Yeah, that's all makes it, yeah.
You should make me a sandwich. So,
That's what she said. She said, no, you need to be scared. Like, you're cautious, I guess.
he's the, do the paparazzi. You have to pay, $2.
Everybody get started?
Yeah, I mean.
Why don't we get started?
All right, go
Yes,
ahead.
please. I think everybody knows Antonio Medina, but he's my neighbor and friend, and, been with the clinic
Yeah,
since the beginning.
okay, thank you very much. In this area where I live, our greeting is Buenas tardes de Dios, no? Buenas tardes de Dios, and there's a response, so and the response is que Dios se las dé felices, right? And what it means is, good evening, you know, good evening to you. And your response is, may God give it to you happiness, may God give you happiness. So what I want to start with is by saying, you know, my presentation is gonna be very informal, no? And it's gonna be very simple. I'm not gonna use any technology or anything, okay? But I want us to have a good evening, no? And I want us to have a happy evening. So what I'm wishing us to start with, just to break the ice, like they say around here, is, you know, just to wish us a good evening, and wish us a happy evening, okay? And with that in mind, and with that kind of energy, you know, so that we can share, and we can visit. I was asked earlier, as on my way over here, are we gonna visit, you know? And that's what I'd like to do, is kind of visit and spend that time that way. But there is first of all a little presentation that I wanna make, and then I'm gonna open it for questions and for interpretation. I had hoped that
that all of you as the board members and staff would have had a copy of the history of what I wrote. And I hope that you did, because that way, what I can spend my time in and emphasize is just to answer questions and to do interpretation. But in case, because there are some people perhaps, that didn't get a copy of what I wrote, so I'm gonna do a summary presentation, and then we'll open it up for questions and that kind of thing. So I want to start first of all by saying that on June 13th, 1974, Presbyterian Medical Services issued a quitclaim deed and turned over the keys to the new group. And the new group at that time was the advisory committee that PMS had organized several years before 1974. That was the new group that was being referred to. But on June 13th, which is el día San Antonio, it just happened to be 1974, we were given a quitclaim deed and also the keys for the organization, for the facility up in Cleveland. But essentially, turning over the quitclaim deed, what that meant was that the medical practice was being turned over to us, okay, to the community group at that time. That's number one. Number two is, so that also meant that the Presbyterian Medical Services that was contracted by the Presbyterian Church, the national church, to manage and operate the services, was saying that we are leaving. We're leaving the practice in the hands of the new group, and we're leaving the area. So that was a partial threat for the continuation of the services, okay? Then the national church at the same time announced that they had a plan for divestment, okay? They were going to divest of ownership and financing and also ownership of the health, education, and welfare services that they had been operating. And that meant that they had around 500 different agencies and services across the country. And they were going to divest those to the lowest possible level. Let's say to the lowest judicatory. So the lowest possible level would be the local Presbyterian church or the community. And since PMS had already organized an advisory committee, and the advisory committee was for the purpose of having local community representation advising PMS how to operate the clinic and what the local needs were. So when the church announced that the divestment, that included the clinic. So that there was another threat that services may end, that we in Mora may end up having no services. And that there would be another gap of services. Some of you know the importance of how important Russell's came to be in the area, no? And then when they closed down and finally had to leave and all of that, it left a gap, a terrible gap in the community. Where, well, not totally, because we have what? We have Family Dollar and Allsup's, but that's not a grocery store in that whole sense. They have a whole different kind of operation. So we have a gap in that. And then on top of that, if we would have had and suffered a gap in healthcare and medical services in the community, so that we would have to some of us probably go to all the other places for our care, but to have the care local, that's the whole idea of having the Moore Valley Clinic. And anyway, so that's the first thing I want to emphasize. The threat to the loss of local services. So then, what we did then, as an advisory committee, is to incorporate, so that we would become a local corporation, a 501c3. So in July 11th of 1974, we incorporated as the Moore Valley Community Health Services. And I had, at that time, I was working with the Presbyterian Church as the executive director of the United Presbyterian Health Education and Welfare Association. And our central office was in New York, okay? So you would ask, I suppose, well, did you move to New York, or how could you be living in Mora? I know you've been directing a national organization out of New York. I asked the church, and I introduced the concept of a local administration. No? Administration doesn't always have to be in Washington, it doesn't always have to be in New York, it doesn't have to necessarily be over there. Administration could be in the local community, and you could administer a national organization out of the local community. So I did that out of Mora. I did that out of Ensenada, where I lived, okay? And I hired an associate director, and the associate director moved to New York, so he was working in the national office in New York. And I was the national director, but I was also the director for the regional work of the church at that time. An example of what I was doing at that time, two examples. One is that I was UPHCWA, as we called it, was responsible as the church divested of these different 500 different kinds of services and agencies to the lowest local level. UPHWA had the role then of helping to implement that divestiture from the national level down to the local area to help as to consult and to contract whatever it took. So it happened at the same time that the service was being threatened here in Mora, that I was working nationally in the role to help make sure that those services would not discontinue, but that they would continue in the community, but that they would continue out of a community level. Okay? To make that a little bit more clear, let me read this. This is one of the mandates and the mandates and the directives that the church, the General Assembly of the church gave itself. It said, in the early 1970s, the National Church announced its plan to divest itself of operation and ownership of its health, education, and welfare agencies across the country to the lowest level possible, which meant in the church structure, that meant you have the national office, and you have the synod, and you have the presbytery, you have the local church. The synod is regional, the presbytery is statewide, and the local church, the session, of course, is the local community area. So what they were talking about here is to divest all the way down. And the restructuring was in response to financial needs and local community pressure for self-determination, local control and ownership of local service agencies, as a true and full commitment to self-development of people, which all denominations claim they were committed to, as central to their support of civil rights and social justice causes and demanded by the local communities of color across America. I don't know how many of you remember or know much about what the civil rights movement was at that time, or the social justice movement at that time in the 60s and the 70s. How many of you are somewhat familiar with that? You are too. You. Yeah. Okay, so it's important because that's really what was happening across the country. And it was what you would call real hot potatoes, real hot potatoes at that time. And I was centrally and very involved in that whole process through the Presbyterian Church. The Presbyterian Church has always been in the forefront of providing services, at that time through missionaries, providing services, but also of empowering the local community, so they have what they call the self-development of people, okay? And it was under that umbrella that I was working. So then, by incorporating the local group and receiving the quitclaim deed and the keys, the quitclaim deed meant what? The medical practice, no? The medical practice. That the medical practice was being transferred over to us, the local group. That's the number one. Number two was also the incorporation. Okay, so you have to be a legal 501c3 to receive the medical services, also to be in a position to operate. So we were ready to go. Only So I then helped the local board of directors to train on how, a policy development for the local group and how to administer local services, medical services, social services. So I was a consultant to the group, and I was also the organizer. And then eventually I became the founding board member, no, the founding chairman of the organization back in that time. So let me just say that there was a long history of health and medical services in the area prior to the church doing this. And that history is this: that first of all, there were the Native Americans in the area, no? The early Native Americans in the area were the Comanche, the Kiowa, the Navajo, and the Apache were the native people in the area. And they were providing health services, no, and medical services, but within their sphere of practice and their beliefs, okay? But those have to be recognized that were in the area, it's part of the history. And then, after that, the Spaniards had come into the area, into the Española Valley in 1598, okay? The Spaniards had come in. They had gone from Spain to Mexico, from Mexico up to northern New Mexico, along the Rio Grande. And they came into the Española Valley, but then over the mountain to this side in about 1816. And they brought their own, medical arts and practices into the area. Curanderas, sobadores, arbolarios, other folk medical practices. A sobadora, as you know, is a curandera is an herbalist, no? So, in addition to what the Native Americans had already been practicing as far as herbology and those kinds of things, the Spaniards complemented that, and we had that in the area, and those were very rich. And if it hadn't been for those services, we would have continued without services, no, until the church came in. So, a curandera is an herbalist, a sobador is a masseuse, no, providing massage services. You know what an arbolario is? An arbolario is, in those days, we believed they were witches, no? Believe me, they were. This particular person was the expert in actually healing and curing you from the witchcraft, no?
I think it's an exorcist.
For being bewitched.
It's an exorcist.
Yes, exorcist, that's right. So those were very famous in the area. And if you say, well, there aren't any witches, people used to say, well, are there really witches or not? No? And they would count stories, all kinds of stories at night about lights over there, and this and that and the other. And a particular person being sick because that person was bewitched. So they said, if there aren't witches, there are definitely malhechores. No, you know what a malhechor is? A malhechor is people who go around harming you, in some way or other, causing you sickness. It could be psychological sickness, it could be emotional sickness, whatever it is. And those that believe in witches say, see, it's the witch, it's witchcraft, But others would say, no, it's just you have to be careful with people, who will harm you in some way, maybe psychologically, emotionally, maybe even physically, kind of thing. Anyway, but that's an arbolario. So those were also experts in the community, in addition. Now we don't have those, but we still have that service, don't we? What do you think psychiatrists are? What do you think psychologists are? You know?
Oh, you're a social
Thank God we have the New Mexico State Behavioral Health Institute in Las Vegas, and I understand we have one of our members, one of our local persons from this organization in our community working over there now. So we have a direct path to service. Let me get on.
And I know how to get you admitted.
So that's part of the history of the health services in the area. The other part that's very important is that in 1923, missionaries from the Presbyterian Church were already in the area, and they were starting to provide health services. They had established a hospital in Embudo, and from that hospital, they used to send doctors into the valley over here, and with the support of the local churches in Pullman and also the local schools in Pullman, they began to provide day clinics, in the area, meaning in Chacon, meaning Pullman, meaning here in the Mora Valley as well. Then, in 1957, there was the medical unit, Mora Valley Medical Unit was organized, and that's when the buildings in Cleveland were constructed and built. You're familiar with those buildings. That was 1957. 1965, the church organized and contracted Presbyterian Medical Services to manage their medical services not only in Mora but in Cuba, in Truchas, in Chimayo, in the different villages. You know that in Mexico, the church already established medical services, and they had PMS was the one that was in charge of operating that whole thing. And the church then, by 1965, had also strongly recommended to PMS and other entities they had around the country that they needed to begin a process of self-development, of empowering the local communities, the local people, to begin to provide their own services, that kind of thing. So PMS' response to that was the advisory committee, which was a good thing because when the threat to discontinue the services happened, the advisory committee then said, well, what are we going to do? And they started talking and said, well, we need to take it on. We need to continue providing the services. It happened that I was back in the area by that time and also working for the church to do exactly that, to help local communities develop self-determination and local community control and ownership of those services. So then PMS left in June 13th of 1974 from here. The National Church had those directives and mandates. We incorporated, as I've already stated, in 1974. And this is very key also, I think, in the history, and that is that we had a concept, as the advisory committee, we requested the church to transfer the properties, the facilities, and other things from the operation, because we had already been transferred the medical services. But we requested that also the clinic, the facility, and everything in it, be transferred to the local community. So they had a consultation in Senator. They had a consultation, and at this consultation, what the Presbytery presented to us, the local committee, Mora, was that they wanted to renew a covenant relationship that they had with us. In the covenant relationship, what they were saying was that they wanted to elect a local board. Okay? They wanted to elect a local board, and they wanted to elect a local board. So what they wanted to do through the covenant relationship was to continue control of the operation and everything else, handing over to us the responsibility to operate, provide the service. That's the hard work, and then for us to manage the whole thing, but they wanted to have control of it through this covenant relationship. So we, as the local committee, then said, you're violating the principle of true community control by doing that, So what resulted, though they also had said that document they presented to us was not negotiable. In other words, take it or leave it. So we said we're not going to take it. So what they do then? The eviction, they gave us an eviction notice. So they evicted us from up there. And we of course went to the civil court. We got an injunction from the civil court against the church, asking for 6 months for us to be able to find a location to relocate, to build our own facility and relocate. and we did that. Fortunately, at that time, the Lopez's that lived next door, Mr. Lopez had been my teacher in the 7th grade in Holman. He was my teacher. And Rachel, Mrs. Lopez, and I had developed a very good relationship as well, the whole family. So they then donated these 2 acres that are over here. They said, we're gonna donate these 2 acres so that Antonio can build his church, quote unquote, okay? Because of my background, and I haven't told you anything on my background yet, maybe somewhere along the way, but I'm gonna wait for that. They said, so that Antonio can build his church, so that in the local community, they didn't want to seem like you know, they were totally supporting our movement and what we were doing, you know, being very careful. But they meant really, so you can build your clinic, you know. When they did that and donated 2 acres of land over here, that was a strong affirmation in the community, you know, this is going to be our clinic, you know. That was one of the first expressions. There were other expressions like that. So, then, fortunately, see, we only had 6 months, no, to build our clinic. We had put aside a reserve, a capital reserve of $260,000, the local group. Because prior to that, when we incorporated, we also went to the legislature in 1974 and asked the legislature to fund the clinic. No? So the legislature funded us for $100,000 a year. That was unheard of for the state to take a role in providing primary health care. But we only got $80,000 because the secretary of the health department, the state health department, said to us, "You're only going to get $80,000 because it's going to cost you $20,000 for us to administer." You know. So we fought it. No, we went back and said, "Well, what was the legislative intent?" No, that's what you say. The legislative intent, and the legislators said, "Well, no, our intent is that this goes to the community, you know, community services." But essentially, nothing really happened. So we were really only getting an appropriation of $100,000, but we were really only getting $80,000 for operation for Mora, you know, that kind of thing. So every year during the legislature, I would go to Santa Fe, you know, to the legislature, and I would make the request again for funding for the clinic. Finally, after they got tired of seeing me coming in every year, they took an action to make it recurring. And recurring means that it automatically happens every year, no? Okay, but then I had already learned the pathway, you know, the whole trail to the legislature. So following that, I used to go and ask for funding for the ambulance services, no, because we had the ambulance to continue. Because when we asked the church to transfer the facility and operation over to us, they said, "Tell you what, you operate the services, provide the services for 3 years without interruption, and we'll consider transferring everything over to you." So guess what? We did it, no. For 3 years we provided services without interruption, but thank goodness that we had the state funding, and then we had some sporadic funding for the ambulance, not all the time, no? To keep the ambulance going without interruption, that's one of the services we inherited. We inherited comprehensive diagnostic and treatment services, okay? And dental services and ambulance services is what we inherited as far as the services. And so we agreed to continue providing it without interruption. Now, after the 3 years were over, they said, "Well, okay, well now transfer it." And they said, "We're going to have a consultation." And they did. And out of that consultation, I told you already what happened, that the eviction notice happened. So I guess other than that, only to say that there were persons and things that were very critically important, I think, in the whole process that I need to mention. And one of those was organization was Camp Luna, their industrial department, and Georgine Pacheco, who was a previous board member. Georgine Pacheco was the director of that department out of Camp Luna, and Representative Sam Vigil was the president of Camp Luna. And Representative Vigil was at the legislature also supporting us for the funding for the clinic, Ray Ledger and other people from the north. Other people from the whole state supported the funding for the clinic, and they also supported the funding for the ambulance. But, so Georgine out of Camp Luna agreed with us that they would, through their department, prefabricate or build the units, the buildings themselves, and then they would let us have them for a very low kind of amount, because they were state funded also, and we were state funded. So they built the facility over here where the clinic is now in the dental. The dental area was prefab by Camp Luna through Georgine's efforts. The medical area was constructed right on site. That was constructed initially. Later, the second building up in the middle was also prefab by Camp Luna. The one up in the back, the home health building was prefab by Camp Luna. And we bought them, but for a very minimal kind of wage, because everybody around the legislature and Camp Luna, other organizations and people, not only in Mora, came out in strong support of our efforts, to help us continue the services. And also so that we could own our own medical center and operate it. They said, yeah, it can be done, we'll do it. So the other person I wanted to just mention is Max Fort. Max Fort, after I was the chairman of the board, and I was hired as the executive director, then Max Fort became the chairman. But Max Fort was also a contractor, a good contractor in the area. And you all know Paul is his son. So we hired Max Fort to be the contractor. So he constructed the whole thing, except for this facility right here, and except for the trailers over here, of course. That's another history. But Max did a wonderful job, in putting the whole thing together for us. Very minimally, the cost was very considerate. And another person I want just to mention is Facundo Valdez. Facundo Valdez was very involved all over the place. When he was recognized, he developed the graduate social work program out of Highlands. And I used to supervise graduate students out of Highlands because I have a master's degree in social work. So I used to supervise students from Highlands in social work. But Facundo Valdez developed that social work program over there. He was on the board of directors. He joined the advisory committee. He was on the board of directors. So he was really the one that went to the legislature and all his buddies and said, look, we need to fund the clinic in Mora. So he was instrumental in doing that. He was also instrumental in helping us get the federal funding. The federal funding is the NAC, National Association of Community Health Centers is what NAC stands for. But the local clinics, such as us over here, could become lookalike. So we were a lookalike to this national organization of clinics, and that NAC, or Community Health Centers, was a movement. Sorry?
It's HRSA.
HRSA, yeah. It's a very strong movement to develop and fund and establish local community centers. In fact, helping to build brand new clinics, with state funding, but federal funding also. And there are a lot of clinics like that. Amy can tell you about the one she came from, not too long ago. And so we were a lookalike, and being a lookalike meant that we could get our prescriptions for much lower, our meds for much lower rate, kind of thing. It also meant that we met the standards that they had set at the beginning. So anyway, only to say that when we applied to NAC, HRSA, thank you for funding, I wrote the first proposal, and that's when I had to gather all the documents and send all the documentation to them, and they denied the first request. So Facundo Valdez wrote the second request, and they denied that as well. So they said no. So then we hired a friend of ours who was known in the area, in the state, for writing those proposals to NAC, And the third proposal that we wrote, we got $1 million, funding for $1 million in 2002 for a 2-year period. No, that was the first funding, that's the history of that. So, so I wanted to recognize Facundo. When he turned 80 years old, I went to him and I said, so what do we call you now, Mr. Valdez? What did he say, Amy? What did he say? He said, no, he said. He was a very tall man, with a strong voice. He said, no, he said, now I am Don Facundo. So, Don Facundo Valdez, no. And, he had a strong role. Then he also, aside being on the board and being chairman at some point after Max Ford became the contractor, Facundo was the chairman. But after being chairman, then he had retired and all of that, so I hired him to be our planning and development director of planning and development. Okay, if when you're an organization brand new and you begin to provide services, I want to say this, that the reason that we didn't say the medical unit, no, we didn't say the Mora Clinic, but that we said the Mora Valley Community Health Services is very important too in the history. Why did we say community services? Because we saw ourselves as being community controlled, the operation y todo, we're the community, so what we wanted was community health services. So, and the importance of having community services. What did that mean? So our vision and our mission was to control and own our own operation. The mission was what? To be successful in providing those services. So let me give you an example quickly here of what we had, of what we were providing as community health services, to emphasize that. And it's important. There it is. I know I had it here somewhere. I guess this could be a lot more effective if I used the technology, you know. But instead of using the technology and cutting us off, I like to preserve the human relationship, you know, the human element to our lives and our experiences coming together. But these are some of the community services that we provided under the new organization. They were, we were the first ones in the area to sponsor and operate a solar heated project, you know, in 1979. And there again, we went back to the Presbyterian Church and got $70,000 to develop solar heated services. And the plan was, the first part of it was to build 60 solar heated units in the county. Okay, these are attached to the home through the window on the south side of the home, so that we could extend the growing season from 5 months to 9 months. Because in this area you can only grow for about 5 months, no, if you're lucky, because of the weather. We extended the growing season to 9 months. Then we also provided enough greens and vegetables for a family of 5 or 6. But we also helped the homes cut down their heating costs by 50% by providing heating from the solar heated greenhouse. Just very simple, attaching a greenhouse to a window on the south side. No, we introduced that in 1979 in the area. Then from here, we transferred that to the other 6 counties in northern New Mexico. And what we did there, the training was that we would do a workshop on how to build a solar heated greenhouse. And we demonstrated that by building a solar heated greenhouse in that county, in a public site. And those 10 families from that area were trained on how to build a greenhouse if they wanted to build their own. We did that throughout all the counties in northern New Mexico. And the plan was that after you have a solar heated greenhouse, which is individually owned by an individual family, then we built a solar community greenhouses, a large community greenhouse where 5 families would come together and operate it. And out of that operation, the third level would be to have farmers markets. So farmers markets out in the community. We have now very popular now. Have those farmer markets out in the community. That was the third level, part of the plan in the dream to do it.
And
But that was-
who helps with that?
I'm sorry?
What employee helps
Oh,
with
yeah,
that?
yeah, thank you. So, a lady by the name of Aida Medina Sandoval was the director of that, and we operated that under an organization that we formed called Centro Cultural Comunal de Agua Negra. Centro Comunal just means it's a communal center, no? Agua Negra is Homan. Homan used to be Agua Negra before. And we organized and established that center to operate that program, and Aida was the director. But the interesting thing is that her assistant was somebody by the name of Patsy Martinez. Patsy Olivas at that time. Patsy Martinez works in the front office and operates a lot of that.
That was her
service.
first job out of high school.
She was the assistant director for that program, no? And that program was sponsored out of the clinic, no? Out of here by that time, and it was very successful. I still have the filing cabinet over there in the shed, no? Intact the way it was when that program shut down, because with time after I left here, and they hired a director after director after director and all of that, some of the directors just said, oh, get rid of it, no? Without looking into what it was, or the history, whatever happened. So, when I saw that these things were going to be thrown out and all of that, I asked, well, can I, save those? So I have the filing cabinet for that program over there in my shed. Let me go from there. Just an example of community service, because when you talk about community health, if what you're doing by providing services, you're not giving importance and priority to a healthy community, not to develop a healthy community, what are you doing there? You're just keeping happy within the walls every day, providing individual services. Well, that's fantastic and that's good, that's important, But why not use the direct services that you provide, as a tool to organize the community, or to provide health services in the community? There's an example to that. This story that in this particular place, they were having people shot, and they would be rushed to the local clinic. The local clinic said, we're going to need to get an ambulance, So they got an ambulance. But more people kept being shot, and they said, we're going to have to get another ambulance, 2 ambulances, 3 ambulances, 4 ambulances, no kind of thing. One of the directors that we had here with the ambulance that we were operating, also that one day said, well, we don't have enough, we're not providing enough services, we're not bringing enough revenue, we're going to have to do something to increase our runs. You know what I'm saying?
Selling guns.
Anyway, so we sat down, we talked about it. Anyway, so essentially what they did was said, instead of more ambulances and more runs and all that kind of thing, they said, we need to go find out who's doing that, who's causing that, In other words, an involvement out of the local organization and community to find out what's happening over there, to help the community more healthy, in that sense. So anyway, now, another service, and then I'm gonna stop and see, I know you don't have any questions. Then we formed another branch out of the clinic that we call Una Vida Buena y Sana project, okay? And you know that the motto you have is, Les deseamos una vida buena y sana. We wish you a good and wholesome life. So we formed an organization to work in the community with that concept. And what we did, we identified 3 elderly women from the area. 3 elderly women, one was in her 90s, another one in her 80s, the other 2 in their 80s. And they became the core of advising us, the clinic, what kind of services we could provide in the community. So what were those services? They said, well, people aren't gardening anymore, The gardening in the area is dying, and so local fruits and local vegetables, aren't being provided anymore. And we can go to the stores and buy them in the store and all of that. However, so they said, what we need to do is to provide, is to help elderly people in the communities, throughout the whole communities, we need somebody to help them plow their garden area. and help them with the gardening, no? And the elderly people would be glad to go over there, you know, plant their plants, irrigate, and grow their own radishes and whatever it is. So we did that to that group. We did a whole lot of other things to that group, but I want to get on to something else. That was Una Vida Buena y Sana. I asked this 90-year-old member of that group, and I said, oiga, pues ¿qué quiere decir una vida buena y sana? What do you mean by una vida buena y sana? And she said, una vida buena is when you grow your own garden, no, your own food. Una vida sana is when you take time and respite and you recognize and you acknowledge that there is a creator, no? That is a creator. That's una vida sana, no? That's a wholesome life. Vida buena y sana. But una vida buena y sana y contenta, no, and happy, no, is the other part that is added in the cultural expression. The happy part is that when you have health, una vida buena, and you also have una vida sana, you also celebrate, no, as a community. You have celebrations. So, quickly, through another organization we had, Siete del Norte, we also co-sponsored in Mora Valley a program where we had college students from the area, and we had high school dropouts, and we had those that working on their GED. We brought them together as a group, and the people who were in college at that time, and Julian knows this very well, and I know it very well. When we graduated from college, you know, the idea was to get a good job, you know? And a good job meant what? Did it mean to come home and be the administrator of the clinic? Did it mean come to Mora and run the ranch? You run the ranch because your dad's gotten too old? What does it mean? You know, they would leave the area, no? They would leave the area. So we called it a brain drain, is what it was called, no? So this group that we formed, and we brought in local people that were in college and said, look, you know, when you finish, we want you to come back to the community, you know, provide those services over here in whatever way is needed and so on, instead of going off somewhere else and making a lot of money and making a name for yourself and losing you. We also want you to help the dropout situation, address the dropout situation in the schools, you know, help them. The GED people that are trying to get their diploma, help them with that. So that was the whole sense of motivating that kind of thing. Does that create a healthy community? Does that create a healthy community? It most definitely does. So that was another outshoot from the clinic, from the medical center. Save Land and Water was another group we had. We asked the church again, and they funded us for $50,000 for that effort. No? Save Land and Water, and that we ran semi-independent from the clinic in the community. There was a board for that. In fact, we ran that also through the Centro Comunal de Aguanera. Save Land and Water. So we had local people on the staff. The Lopez family over here provided some of the staff time and all of that. They paid staff positions to save land and water. And I'm not going to go into the importance of saving land and water. Why is that so important? What does that have to do with health? What does that have to do with community health? Huh? Has nothing to do, right? Because we don't want to farm anymore. It's just too much work. You know what I mean? All that kind of thing. Save the land. Save the water. Don't sell your land. No. Your water rights. We have acequias all over the state. We have close to 800 acequias across the state. So for 17 years I was the director of the New Mexico Acequia Association. No, we have the acequias organized throughout the whole state. Find out more about the New Mexico Acequia Association.
Okay, what's the acequias?
I'm sorry?
The ditches, the community ditches.
Yeah.
Okay, thank you.
Anyway, so the acequia is a channel that carries water. The Muslims, the Arabs brought it from North Africa, Morocco to Spain, from Spain to Mexico, from Mexico where? To northern New Mexico, to Mora, to Ensenada, no? And ours, we have an acequia, they have an acequia, no? To irrigate our land and that kind of thing. So the other thing that we did was also Oh yeah, this one we failed. We tried very hard to develop a mobile clinic. No? We wrote a proposal to buy a van, because by that time we found out that they had already built and equipped vans, so we could have a clinic, a big clinic. So we said, okay, so we're gonna get a van. We're gonna take the services out of here, out of the walls and all that, into the villages. And on this day, we're gonna go to that village. We're gonna go to that village, and that kind of thing. No? And possibly out of that approach, build a little clinic in the villages all around it. One can have their own clinic, and then this clinic over here could be the central clinic. And when they need support or referrals, whatever else, they come over here. Primary care, and then from here to secondary care, and then to tertiary care. No, what's the process of doing that? I mean, there's nothing much to this. It can be done if you have the conviction, no, and you want to really do something. If you really care, and if you love, no, if you give a damn, no, you can do it. No, if you don't, you can just pass it around, no, quick, however it is. You know what I'm saying? But that's what it takes, and Amy knows about that. I know. I know that Deborah knows about that, and I know that Eloise, who sits back there very quiet, knows about that, and I know that the rest of you know about that because your staff here and you also board members over here, and also because you continue a responsibility and something that's very important in this community. And I'm just now about to end, providing you with a snapshot of a history, you know, of the organization. What else did we do, since we had nothing else to do? Oh yeah, we made sure that we continued the ambulance services. We thought that was critical in the area, no? So you know how we funded the ambulance? We used to go house to house all over the villages, no? And ask for a donation. And people would open the door and they would actually donate to keep the ambulance going. You know why? Because when they had emergencies, they used to call out our EMT team, which were volunteers at that time, headed by Luis Casados, no, volunteers, no. They would go out and do this and that and the other, take care of it. But we also had tamale dinners. And let me ask you, in tamale dances, no, have you ever danced to the tamale? Let me tell you, that can be a lot of fun, and it raises a lot of funds, no, to keep an ambulance going. And the other thing is, we also established and developed our own home health services in Mora County, home health services. So we had home health services, we had home care, we had individual care, and some of the other services. I think at this point there's only a residual. I think home care still continues. Adult care, and what's the other?
Personal care.
Personal care. I think those are still continue. So we developed that whole organization and process here in Mora. Also, why did we do that? Because we wanted to have a healthy community. What did that mean? That meant that we wanted our elderly people, you know, instead of going to a nursing home somewhere else, that they would stay in the home, stay with their family, that they would stay in the community. If you keep your elderly people in your community, and your elderly people are not only honored, they're also the ones that know your history. They're a treasure. We didn't want a treasure to go to Vegas, Santa Fe, or Albuquerque. You know what I mean? We wanted to keep elderly in the community, and so that's why the home health services and those other services. We wanted the elders here. Not too long ago, maybe a couple of years ago, there was a report saying that one of the counties that has the highest rate of elderly living in the home and living in the community is Mora. I think that maybe, just maybe, we contributed a little bit to that, and that program is very essential in us having a healthy community. And that's enough. Now, I'm gonna stop there. Really, I've been saying that because I run out what else to say.
Whatever happened to the Cleveland Clinic? Did they ever sell that, or did you know, when you moved here, that kind of left them holding the bag down there?
Yes. The answer to that is yes. And no. There are copies here. There are copies here of the history. Thank you for them for providing these. They're over here. Those of you that don't have copies, please help us up copies.
But it sounds like even though that you kind of split up on not the best terms, that the church was still helping to support you over the years.
I'm sorry?
Even though you kind of split up on not great terms with the church.
Yeah.
But it seems like over the years, they continue to help support the MVCHS.
Oh, yeah, yeah.
That was one of my questions, Antonio.
Yeah.
After the church.
Excuse me, I'll get right back to you, but I'm gonna answer his question, okay? I'm gonna answer your question. What happened to the facility up in Cleveland, he says, no? When we moved out of there over here, the local churches attempted to develop, a boarding home, okay? And they tried that for 7 months, but they weren't able to do that. So then, they put the facility on the block for sale. But the facility over there was owned by the National Church. The National Church always owned everything, no, throughout the whole thing. So they owned it. So they put it on the block to sell it. And we had another organization that we called Center Agnostic Community Development Corporation with a base out of Dixon, out of El Burro, no? So through that organization, we went to the National Church because we already had a good relationship with them, and we purchased the facility up there.
Right.
However, there's a grant mortgage, okay? And a grant mortgage means that when you buy it, you pay so much money, but they also give you a grant. But the grant is a mortgage. If you ever sell it, it goes back to the previous owners. That's a catch on that one. Other than that, there's more history to that facility up there. But one of the things that we did was out of that center, we had the Rio Grande Alcoholism Rehab Program, which provides alcoholism services. We rented it to them. We also owned that organization, the Rio Grande Alcoholism Rehab. We rented it to them, and the state would pay for us to have residential services, okay? So we had residential services there for years to help treat alcoholism and drug abuse out of that facility. Okay, do you have a question?
Yeah, it's tied to his. So after you guys broke away from the church still funded some of your endeavors.
Some of the community projects, because we said the idea was to have self-development of people. No? That was the commitment that the church had made, no? And the mandates, no, to divest to the local community. We said, okay, you still have. What is your continuing role? And I was employed by the church then, no, nationally. And one of my roles was said, well, we're proposing to do this community project. What you do there, over there in Cleveland, out of that building, we said we're proposing that the ambulance garages, no, that are no longer being used because now the ambulances are run over there. That you provide us the money so we can develop that into a community center. So we developed that into a human development center, no? Out of what is now Lo de Mora, that was the ambulance garages, no? We developed that into that at that time. But your question more specifically?
It's that the church still helped fund some of the programs or startups, even though you guys broke away from them.
Okay. Yeah, because I give examples of some of the community services that we had. That
It might be helpful to say, what's your background?
I'm sorry?
What's your background?
My background. Yeah, they funded, for example, as I mentioned, no, they funded.
Not gonna answer that.
They funded the Solar Heater Greenhouse project. They funded the Safe Land and Water project and all of that related to the clinic.
But after you guys broke away.
Even though we broke away, because you see, we didn't break away from the church. You know what I'm saying?
But they evicted you, and
yeah.
It sounds like that.
Church broke away from them.
When you didn't accept their offer originally in '74, and you said no, we're going to go on our own.
Yeah,
there had been some hard
of course,
feelings.
we're going to go on our own. We're going to go on our own as an organization. No, doesn't mean we're leaving. No, that kind of thing. However, she's saying, you know, what's your background? My background is that I have a master's degree in social work, and I have a master of divinity, which is a master in theology, from the McCormick Theological Seminary in Chicago, and from the Jane Addams Graduate School of Social Work, also in Chicago. Okay, so So in that sense, I was very much within the Presbyterian Church officially, you know what I'm saying? So that also kept that tie and that commitment. As well as I learned the legislative process. No? I also knew the process within the church, not only the Presbyterian Church, but the other churches throughout, and also very well what the churches commit themselves to do, to what degree they do, what degree they don't do it. You know what I'm saying? So anyway, yeah. Anyway. So as a little community, you know, it's kind of like lighting a bright light at night, no, and having people say, "What the hell is that light?" No, what's that about? No. Anyway, other questions?
How did you inherit the ambulance program? Where did that come from?
Where is it?
Okay, when we took over the operation of the services, and we committed ourselves to continue to provide the services without interruption, no? With the hope that they would transfer the facilities to us, we inherited the ambulance.
The church used to operate the ambulance.
They used to operate the ambulance out of the clinic. And that's why I say that the garages for the ambulance over there where those Demora are now, in that center, that used to be the ambulance.
How many years were you a look-alike before you got the 330 funding?
Oh, okay. So another thing that we did, that's an important question. We became a look-alike, I don't have the year, but fairly soon, because when we were fortunate enough to get funding from the state for primary health care, other clinics began to say, well, why don't we go to the state also and ask the legislature for monies? So Facundo and I helped them to organize what is now the Primary Care Association. Okay, we helped to organize that also. And now the other clinics come together. So then instead of Mora going alone to the legislature, we all as clinics go to the legislature for funding. That's the history of that.
And that's where RIFCA came from.
I'm sorry?
That's where RIFCA came from.
Oh yeah, and the RIFCA thing also, the look-alike idea is that you don't necessarily receive funding, but you develop your program, your operation, all of that in the model, that particular model. And that was a movement across the country to develop these health medical centers in the local communities. No? We were already from the communities, through the civil rights and the social justice movement, we were already beginning to develop our own clinics. No? People owned, developed by volunteers. No? But then when NAC, through the government, developed that program, we said, hey, here we are, no? Come and help us, kind of thing. So, yeah.
How many, go ahead, Jim.
The church gave you the authority to run the ambulance. When did it transfer over to the county?
Okay. To run the ambulance, you have to be licensed, no, by the state, and it's a state that regulates that, no? But I think shortly after Julian came, if I remember correctly, when Julian came, the board here decided that they wanted to transfer the ambulance to the county because, see, the county really has the semi-legal responsibility to provide the services. But since they weren't able to do it, the church picked it up through the center. Okay, that's how we inherited. So then when Julian came and they were evaluating, your board was evaluating the ambulance, the cost and all of that, I give you the figures on that. No? You decided that to give the ambulance back to the county because they were the ones that had the semi-responsibility.
2012. When were you here, Jim? It happened in 12.
I was here then, but I thought that they already had the authority.
Did the county have it before? At any time before? No.
The county had never operated the ambulance.
How did you guys manage? How did you guys operate with no 330 funding? Just a skeleton crew? What was the operation like? Did you have one part-time doc, one part-time dentist, one part-time therapist? What did you have starting off throughout the years?
Okay, what we did was we paid very low administrative salaries, okay? Our administrative staff were trained in such a way that they were part of the commitment, part of the community movement, our staff. Not only our medical directors, but and also our staff throughout. And what we prioritized was the little bit of funding that we have was to pay doctors so we could get doctors and dentists to come and practice. Yeah, that's how we did it. Then the dancing with tamales, no?
Fundraising.
Other questions?
I have a question.
Yes.
How did you deal with working with the local government agencies and all that throughout? Was it always been turbulent and?
The local government agencies?
Yeah, like
Give me an example.
the county and other
Schools.
and the schools.
Yeah. Okay, I'm gonna tell you, I'm gonna answer that question, but I'm gonna ask you not to repeat it. Turn the camera on. Yes, turn towards the, no, it's okay. See, from our experience in the local communities, we already knew that if we were gonna be a semi-independent movement, no, to address civil rights issues and social justice issues, we couldn't be tied down, no, in that way. So, what happened out of that movement was that for some reason or other, except individuals, the churches didn't become that involved in the operation. The political entities like the county commission didn't become that involved either, and we didn't encourage it, no?
There was no money to
You hear what I said?
go
We
around.
didn't encourage it, so we didn't have that kind of a primary relationship with the churches or with the public agencies.
So when did we start providing school-based services?
Oh, yeah.
Julian could better answer that.
What was the year? 15?
15.
I have a question.
But it was done before too.
What happened with the greenhouses? So were they used, the solar greenhouses, were they just the position where they were, or did they have a solar panel? And what happened to all the people, like what happened with that? I mean, I know the clinic didn't get involved anymore, but what happened? Do people still use them? Do people still have them?
I am embarrassed and also very happy to answer that question. What happened to the solar heated greenhouses? The individual solar heated greenhouses, some people put the time and the work to make them work, and they work wonderful. No? Some of them we're growing vegetables, we're growing flowers, we're doing herbs and different kinds of things like that. Especially in the smaller villages throughout the county, you know, so they were around. With time, we began to see that some people were also growing marijuana. And that was illegal because marijuana is still not legal in this county. If at that time hemp had been illegal like it is now, they could have at least grown hemp. You know what I'm saying?
Yeah.
So, with time, the individual ones just died out, and the individual ones died out, the community also died out. So we never, we got maybe a couple of times, 3 times, to actually develop the third step, which was to have farmers markets, so, from the community greenhouse. There's a guy in Vegas called Michael Antonio Coca, who is fantastic in research and all that kind of things. He helped us write the proposal for that project. No? He was also a consultant for the project, no, at that time. But it was a very good idea. But now, you know how much it is. And then you could buy Lascolite for almost nothing. You could buy the materials, the solar materials for almost nothing. Now, you know, you have to give up tamales to afford Lascolite.
What did your board look like throughout the years? How many did you start with, and at which point did you guys say you wanted to be 9 to 13 or whatever? How many board members did you start with?
At what point did we want to do what?
How did your board look over the years? How many did you start with, and was there always 5, 10?
Yeah. Okay. No, I think we had, we probably had 11. No, that was the number that we could have, and we had our emphasis in the board was to have the community that represented as much as possible, so that reflected the community, you know, in terms of the ethnic representation, economic level, educational level, those kinds of things, okay? So that we had people on the board who were very highly educated, you know, and who had money, and we had people on the board who were people who were farmers, you know, farmers on the board. So we tried to have representation for the whole community, but have a strong representation of quote unquote those who need the development. The concept was, and I wrote a paper about that too, is the concept was, if you want self-development, put the resources in the hands of those who need the development. Because being condescending doesn't help anybody. You know what I'm saying? And also shipping it out whenever you want to, and having all kinds of rules and rules and regulations, no? How people can utilize the resources that are there, no? You know what I'm saying? There's nothing wrong with the resources, especially money, and especially the empowerment of owning a corporation, an organization, and running it. There's nothing wrong with local people and poor people, you know, doing that.
I think,
There's nothing wrong with that.
I think Rivka has the same requirement though as HRSA, so there was always at least 9.
Yeah, it just looked like, you know, from your presentation, it looked like you started with a board with 19 people on it.
What's the 19?
Yeah.
Wow.
Okay, what we did originally, the original board, you're right, the original board, we took the advisory committee, okay, and I can tell you who those are, who they were, and then we added community representation to that, okay? But in our bylaws, I think we said 11.
Okay.
Okay, yeah. But yeah,
When you started and throughout the years, were there any points the services were offered like a couple days a week, or the whole time they've been offered full time? Medical, dental, you know, you've had, or was it 1 day a week medical, 2 days a week dental?
throughout the whole time, we provided services full-time. Yeah, throughout the whole time. Not only did we continue the services that were there before, we added services, okay? We added services, and also we developed the service in the community. So we had a lot of volunteer help and a lot of support from the community, okay? The community itself was excited about it all. So yeah, we had them full time.
And to get providers here had to have been more difficult then than now, right?
Are there any other questions? Are there any other questions? Yeah, that's a very key question. See, because we had a very difficult time, you know, recruiting dentists and recruiting doctors to come and live and provide services here in Mora.
With no internet and no.
In those days,
No mail service?
In those days, people were moving to Mora. You know what I mean? And doctors didn't
know about it.
But we recruited very, very specifically through other clinics and in every way we possibly could. Finally, we would find, like Dr. Gaspar, for example, was working in out there.
Clovis.
No, he was cool.
He was in Clovis, I
In
think.
Clovis, he was in Clovis. No? He was employed over there. He had his own practice. He was working in the hospital. That's the Presbyterian hospital there. Dr. Gaspar was working for them, no. But he had this guy. He's Hungarian, no. His wife is also Hungarian. They came from Hungary. But and he developed a very good practice. So we got to know him. I got to know him, and we sat down and we talked. And he said, "You know, Antonio, I'm very interested in working in the whole community." He says, I have a good practice here, but I would be interested in talking with you and your board." So we worked something out, and he came as a medical director here. Dr. Gaspar, that's one example.
There was lots of turnover though.
Sorry?
Can I just say that I find it interesting that this last weekend, Antonio got a call from somebody who used to be a physician assistant here long before I was here. So I mean, that was 21 years ago, at least. And asked him, they went and had breakfast at Teresa's. It's like, they keep in touch. They fall, they don't just fall out of the sky. I believe that when you put something out, that things come back. And Antonio spent a whole lifetime putting something out. So when the need was there, the people came.
Donisi is his name, no? Physician assistant. And he's been working in Guatemala, no? Been working in Guatemala. But we still keep in touch. So he was one of our physician assistants. Dentists, we were able to recruit dentists also who had a practice and wanted to work in the community, you know, out of an individual practice and work in the community. So we were able to recruit some people, but it was very difficult. And the key thing was the retention. No? You can recruit someone, no? You can recruit someone, but then you have to pay special attention to retain those persons.
He was hoping you could tell him the key to do that.
You don't want his key.
So,
Because it has nothing to do
so
with.
other questions? Yes.
you know, in the days when you were working the clinic, pretty much there weren't any other medical facilities in the area, except for traveling doctors and other people. Did you have an 80% group of people from the community, or 90%, or do you think everybody at that point came to the clinic at one point or another to get medical services?
Well, I don't think we even have that now after all these years.
Oh, no, we don't.
We don't have that yet, no, after this.
We don't.
Almost 40 years, we still haven't achieved that.
We're still looking to find ways to get that.
Yeah. But however, what's the first part of your question?
So
why don't they come?
What percentage of?
Why don't they come?
Why don't they come?
Yeah.
Why doesn't
The
everybody
local
come?
people?
Yeah, why don't the local
for services
people come
here?
to services?
For services here?
Yeah.
I don't know, but there could be a number of reasons, no? Number of reasons, and that is that, oh yeah, I see what your intention was. Because we had this community involvement and community service and all that kind of thing, I think we had a fairly good number of people coming for the services here, no? We never said, okay, we have a requirement that for you to be a part of this service or that service like that, you also come for your services here, no? I know that the board of directors right now, the federal government has a requirement that says that they would like for board members to also be patients of the clinic, no? That's a requirement now, no? But we had I think a healthy showing of people in the whole community. However, I have to also say that, you know, it wasn't all as beautiful as I make it sound. There were also conflicts, no, in the community and at different levels because of our approach and what we were doing, and also I think how we presented ourselves and took it on, no. So there were also some conflicts in the community. One of the things we did in community health was, if we saw that there was something going to kind of be proposed in the local community, and we thought it was going to affect the community negatively, you know, we got involved with that. And I give you examples of that. They wanted to have a rock festival, no, at one point in Mora. We already knew that they had one in New York, no, and that it had been a disaster. You know what I'm saying? So we organized. The clinic was the base. We organized against it, no. And it was one of our local persons here who was proposing to have it, and it happened to be that he was the representative who introduced the first request at the legislature for the first funding for the clinic. No? We said, you know, we have a commitment, you know, in our community, and I wanted to be healthy. Others of us wanted to be healthy, and we wanted to keep the strong sense of being community, being communal. In fact, being communal is one of our strong historical values, no, in the community, being communal, and that kind of thing. So anyway, when we had the first meeting, it was proposed to have it at the courthouse. So we were having this individual and his developer, no? And they came and they brought Representative San Vigil to the meeting with them. There were so many people, an overwhelming response, no? From all the villages all over, we didn't fit in the courthouse. We went to the small gym and we filled the small gym, no? And everybody there said, we don't want it, we don't want it. And they said, Antonio, we want you to speak in Spanish. In Spanish, I said, my God. In my French, I hadn't brushed on my French for a long time. No, I speak Spanish fluently. No, in fact, English is my second language. No, when I went to graduate school, and I was required to list two foreign languages. No, I listed English as my first foreign language, and my other language was Hebrew. You know, I studied Hebrew. That was my second language. No? And I learned to read the Hebrew Bible. And these people, you know what they do? They start reading from the back forward. And you know what happened to me? If I read something anymore, I always start reading a book from the back. Seriously, there's something to that. I don't know what it is. Maybe I'm just looking at the pictures or whatever it is. Or I'm looking at it. Then I can sit down and concentrate and read the book.
Yeah, I think it's usually the best part.
But it's interesting. I don't know what it is. I'm sorry, I'm not answering questions completely. Are there other questions?
Let me just say something to Jim, and that's it. I think that the same amount of doctors, you know, were in Vegas at the time that there are now, and Central was named something else, but they were there too. And the people who refused to be seen locally would go over there too.
Oh,
So
they
it's-
were already.
There are people who, I think confidentiality in a small
Yeah.
place is always a question.
Mhm.
No matter what you do and no matter how hard you try to, make them know that, you're not gonna violate anything, there's some people who just feel like they don't wanna be seen locally.
That's very
Centers
true.
of Northern New
And
Mexico.
That was
brings
the
the
name.
question of why did we
St. Louis,
locate
but it
here,
was,
no? Why did we locate here? But finish answering the question.
What was it?
That's right.
Something
About,
Centro
Oh,
Campesino
Centro
de
Campesino de-
Salud?
You see, so
Then
when
health
the
center.
community came
That's what
put
our
out
actual name was. They
against
changed it.
that particular endeavor,
Trying to get more patients.
they still insisted on continuing to do it. So we organized a march from the schools all the way down, the following Saturday was Holy Saturday. We organized a march from the schools to La Cueva to San Rafael Church. San Rafael Church, this coming Saturday, are having a fundraiser and they're presenting a lot of the culture and all of that, San Rafael, down at La Cueva. So over 100 people came on that walk all the way down. I have the pictures of all of that sometime, if you'd like to see it. We asked the sheriff and the police to stay away, because we had experiences in the urban areas when we were organizing, the police would go and instigate this or that, just to break us up, you know what I'm saying? So we asked the sheriff and the police here to please stay away, they stayed away. And we provided our own patrol. We had 12 horsemen on horses, armed, walking with us
I
as
have,
we were
I have a
marching.
serious
Let
question.
me just finish. So in case, you see this is a canyon, in case from this side of the mountain, that side of the mountain, somebody would shoot at us, you know what I'm saying? We had our own patrol, and they kept us in line. Yeah, sorry, go ahead.
It's serious, tell me about that picture.
Okay?
I wanna know about that picture.
Oh,
Do you know when
Yeah,
that was
cause that doesn't
taken?
look the same way we do everything.
Do you know when
Okay.
that was taken?
that picture right there,
Must be for the man.
that's the original building that Max Ford built for us, no? The one this way is what Max Ford built, and the other on the left was prefab by Camp Luna. But that's the original facility. When we moved over there, that's where we moved. And we ran everything out of there for a while until we expanded to another building.
Wow.
Yeah, that's the original building. Somebody else had a question. You were mentioning something. What was it?
That was my question.
I'm gonna, not so much a question, but your thoughts on, the elderly in the area. There are a lot of elderly that still live here, but it seems like, to me, that the problem now is that the younger generation is leaving the elderly behind. And if you wanna keep the elderly, you need to keep the younger people there to help support them.
Yeah. That's very true, and the problem is compounded too, because many of the new people are coming into the area, are also of retirement age or close to retirement age, and their kids are also staying out there already. So we're ending up with the elderly, the local community, being here, and the elderly people coming in and settling in the area. So I think we're gonna have a challenge there, how we keep the community healthy, and what kind of services we're gonna need, and the importance of those services in the community. And I think it kind of reflects on the importance of what you're doing here.
Yeah.
And I wanted to beginning really to recognize it, to thank all of you who serve on the board, and also staff who are here, provide the services, and the kind of community support you have. I want to acknowledge you and to thank you from the bottom of my heart. This is so important, so important.
And even next time.
Yeah, so, but that issue, Steve, is something that I addressed earlier about the brain drain,
Yeah.
that we have the people that graduate at college, graduate from high school, that's the first challenge. The second one is to graduate from college. Very few people go to college. At the time that I did, I was probably the only one in my family, probably one of the only ones in the area that would go to college and graduate from college and go to graduate school. But the idea that we're pushing, and we pushed them before, is, and more of our young people who have been out of the area are coming back into the area.
But they come back as old people.
Exactly.
They come back as old people.
Yeah,
Let me
that's
just-
why it's time to retire. That's true.
Let me speak to that a little bit. Several years ago, many years ago, Antonio was the head of the health council in Mona, and they went around and asked people, like, what do you think, what are our priorities, what are the issues? And substance abuse was always one of them. And so Antonio decided his approach would be to go out to some of the elderly people who've been here a long time and see what do they think has changed. What has changed that made this negative turn? And so he heard overwhelmingly by them that people don't work the land anymore. People are, the kids don't have anything meaningful to do, and they turn to drugs. So as a result of that, several of us who were involved with the New Mexico Acequia Association decided, well, we took on a project, Sembrando Semillas is what it is, and so what we did was we had, instead of one mentor adult, we had several of us that worked with some kids that we thought were at risk of maybe, going the wrong direction. We didn't tell them that, we just recruited some kids to come and we worked with them several years in a row, helping them work the land, learn the remedios, every year we had a different focus. We built 7 hornos, we did all kinds of things. Every year it was something different, and if you look at the kids who stuck with it, they're all doing really well. But I think that it takes a whole lot of effort, and all of us that were doing it, none of us had our own children in that project. It was other community kids, and it was very worthwhile for them and very rewarding for us, but I think really what it's gonna take is a whole lot of people to get involved with that.
If you're busy, it's hard to do drugs.
Well, and if you see
purpose.
something else, it's really, it is.
It's how you have to get bored and turn to something.
You have the self-worth.
Well, that's exactly what, we do at Collins Lake, is, the idea is that everyone needs to have a purpose in life. You have to have a reason to get up in the morning. And if it's just to play video games and to do math, that's not much of a purpose.
But they have to
But
self-work.
that's a really big challenge.
But yeah, I look at it, there's nothing more fun than going out there doing some thinning and cutting firewood and doing this.
Something physical.
Yeah.
You can't even, that's how you get a person out of depression. You make them work physically, you do something, so they're not in their head, they're in their physical body.
I think we need a program where people come out to my ranch and help me thin and cut firewood all day long.
Muchísimas gracias.
De nada, I just want to thank all of you, for taking some time to come out and begin to chat. And maybe a suggestion that I would have is, if there's a way that you could continue to have some kind of visits, some kind of communication, kind of discussions with community people, for you as a staff and you as the board, have an opportunity, maybe serve some food, maybe some tamales, serve some food, invite people to come and chat, come and ask questions, and all of that, see what their concerns are, how they can help you. I know it's very difficult to recruit board members, one of the things, very difficult to retain board members, but to say, nobody wants to serve on the board is what I hear, what I hear around, and I know very well how difficult that is. So, but that has to do with what is your relationship with the community, what is your relationship with the community? Does the community really own this facility and these services? Does the community really own them? Does the facility, does the community really operate them? That whole concept, the whole idea, or is it so institutionalized, that what you're really operating is an institution? And what an institution does is that it builds walls and it builds wider and wider walls, so your inside becomes restricted and smaller and smaller. That an institution is very different from having a community center or having a community clinic or a community operation. Community is the people. Community is the people, and it includes everybody. The beauty about it is that it includes everybody. There's no color, there's no ugly, beautiful, or this or that, fat and skinny people. It's a community. And the community has a face, and the community has a body, the community has a heart, the community has a soul. You have to acknowledge that, affirm that, or you don't have a healthy community. And if you don't have a healthy community, you are part of the community. Then you're not healthy. You know what I'm saying? The concept and the truth really is, the concept and the truth is that we really all one. All life is one. All life is one. All life is one. All of life is one. And that's the wholeness, the whole. Then it breaks up into diversity. But the diversities aren't out there for us to compare them and say, well, I prefer that diversity to diversity, that diversity. The diversities are to gain knowledge while they're out there, gain knowledge and become strong, and then come back and rejoin the whole and renew the whole and make the wholeness stronger. That's really the process, the natural process. Look at nature. Look at the Native American, no? That's how it is. That's how it is. Anyway, thank you all very much.
Thank you.
Thank you, Antonio, for sharing your expertise and the history of the community, not only the health center. When I originally spoke to Antonio about his presentation today, we were talking about how important it is